The doctor was fighting to save my daughter in the emergency room. Outside, her mother-in-law said coldly, she deserved it. I was about to answer her when my daughter's best friend walked up and said, "Do you want me to tell the whole hospital the real reason your daughter-in-law got in that accident?" The entire hallway went dead silent. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's reached. I'm sitting in my little house on the outskirts of Chicago, a dim yellowish light reflecting off the faded walls. I'm alone tonight, silently folding each sweater for Sarah, my daughter. She called me yesterday, her voice like a little girl's, complaining that it was cold and her coat was just a thin little thing. I smiled, imagining Sarah's face when she gets these sweaters. I bet she'd throw her arms around me in a big hug, just like when she was little. The wall clock ticked away, marking 10:45 at night. I had just sat down in my old armchair to take a sip of hot tea, feeling the warmth spread across the palm of my hand. Suddenly, the landline phone rang, sharp and cold, cutting through the silence. I jumped, put down the mug, and my heart started pounding a mile a minute. Who could be calling at this hour? Nobody calls this late unless it's bad news. I picked up the phone, my voice hoarse. "Hello?" On the other end of the line, a woman's voice, rushed and trembling. "Are you Sarah's mother? This is Teresa, a nurse at St. Philip's Hospital. Your daughter is in the ER. You need to come immediately. She's just been in a car accident." I felt like the world was crashing down on me. An accident? My Sarah? No, it couldn't be. She had just called me yesterday, laughing, saying she was coming to visit me this weekend. I shot up from my chair, and the teacup slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor as the liquid splashed everywhere. My hands were shaking, my head was spinning. "What did you say? Sarah, how is she? Is it serious?" I practically yelled into the phone, but Teresa just repeated, "Come immediately, hurry." I grabbed the first coat I could find, my hands trembling so much that I even dropped my wallet. My mind was a blank slate. I could only see Sarah's face, her radiant smile, her warm brown eyes. I had to get to her right now, but I couldn't get a cab to answer. The network was down, and the phone just gave me a busy signal. Desperate, I ran to Mr. Henderson's house. My neighbor, a good man. I pounded on his door with all my strength, shouting, "Mr. Henderson, please help me. Sarah, she's been in an accident." Mr. Henderson, with his gray hair, opened the door and, seeing me shaking, didn't ask another question. He just nodded. "Get in, I'll drive you." On the way to St. Philip's Hospital, I was curled up in a ball in the back seat, my hands clasped tightly together. Mr. Henderson was driving fast, but to me, everything seemed to be moving in slow motion. My head was filled with horrible thoughts. What if Sarah doesn't make it? I couldn't bear that thought. She's my light, my precious daughter. Ever since my husband passed away 10 years ago, Sarah has always been by my side, always making me laugh, no matter how hard life got. I whispered prayers to God, asking him to watch over her. When we got to the hospital, I bolted toward the emergency room, almost slipping on the shiny tile floor. The smell of antiseptic hit my nose, and the noise of machines and people's murmurs made me even more nervous. A doctor, with a badge that said Dr. Evans, was standing in front of the ER doors. His face was tense, his eyes filled with worry. I ran to him, my voice cracking. "Where is Sarah? How is she?" Before he could answer, Teresa, the nurse who called me, came running over. She took my hand and in a choked voice said, "Please, calm down. Sarah suffered a very severe blow to the chest. She lost a lot of blood. But the most important thing is that her heart just stopped." Hearing that, I froze. Her heart stopped? No, it couldn't be. My Sarah, my healthy, vibrant girl, couldn't just leave like this. I leaned against the cold wall, my eyes glued to the glass of the emergency room. Through it, I saw Sarah lying motionless on the bed, her black hair disheveled and her face pale. Around her, doctors and nurses moved in a hurry. One was doing chest compressions, another held a syringe. A tangle of wires covered her body, as if they were trying to tie down that fragile life by force. I wanted to scream, to run and hug her, but my feet were nailed to the floor. I could only stand there, tears streaming down my cheeks, whispering, "Sarah, honey, don't leave me." The minutes passed like centuries. I didn't dare blink, afraid that if I looked away, Sarah would disappear. Suddenly, the heart monitor let out a soft beep, then another, and then it became more steady. Dr. Evans turned around and shouted, his voice filled with hope, "We've got a pulse." I felt like I'd been pulled out of an abyss. Sarah's heart was beating again. My girl was still alive. I sank to my knees in the hallway, sobbing my eyes out, thanking heaven and earth. My tears were no longer of pain, but of a joy mixed with a fear that still hadn't left. I was sitting on one of those hard, cold plastic chairs in the hallway of St. Philip's Hospital. The cold white light from the ceiling made me shiver. A young nurse with a high bun came over and gently placed a thin blanket over my shoulders. "Save your strength, ma'am," she said in a soft voice. "We're doing a CT scan of her brain, and we're going to monitor her pressure for a few more hours. Have some hot tea." She handed me a styrofoam cup. I could feel the heat in my hands, but my heart was still frozen. I nodded to thank her, trying to hold back the tears, but my head was a whirlwind. I stood up, trying to take a deep breath to calm myself. Just then, I heard the click-clack of heels on the tile floor. I turned and saw Evelyn, Mark's mother, my son-in-law's mother, walking in. She was wearing an expensive fur coat, her lips a fiery red, and in her hand was the latest iPhone, which she was speaking into with a sharp tone. Before I could say anything, she hung up and looked right at me. Without a greeting, without a hint of concern, she let out a sentence that stabbed me like a knife in the heart. She deserved it. I was stunned as if I'd been slapped. She deserved it? My daughter, the girl I love more than my own life, was in an emergency room, and this woman dared to say that. I clenched my fists, trying to contain the rage boiling inside me. I was in a hospital. I couldn't make a scene. But before I could answer her, another voice cut in, calm but sharp. "So do you want me to tell the whole hospital the real reason your daughter-in-law got in that accident?" I turned around and saw Jessica, Sarah's best friend. She was wearing a denim jacket, her hair loose down to her shoulders, and her eyes were full of determination. Evelyn froze, her red lips pressed into a thin line. Jessica didn't wait for her to answer. She took out her phone and played a video. "Look at this," she said, her voice as cold as ice. I moved closer, my heart pounding. On the screen, I saw Mark, my son-in-law, in the middle of a fancy party. Around him were his mother, the very same Evelyn, along with Mark's sister and brother, the whole Caldwell family. They were toasting with wine glasses, laughing out loud. A man, his face red from alcohol, shouted, "To Mark and the baby! The Caldwells are finally getting an heir." I was stunned, like someone had punched me in the stomach. What baby?" I blurted out, my voice trembling. Jessica sighed and looked at me with deep sadness. "It's his mistress's child," she said, lowering her voice. "A friend of mine recorded this video at the party today. She knows the Caldwells, they invited her. I sent it to Sarah this afternoon." I just stood there, my head spinning. Sarah got this video, and then she drove there, didn't she? I looked at Jessica, trying to keep my voice from breaking. What did she say to you?" Jessica nodded, her eyes red. "She asked me for the address of the party. I guess she was planning to go confront them." My whole body started to shake, as if an electric current was running through me. So Sarah, my daughter, saw that video, found out Mark was cheating on her, found out his whole family was celebrating another woman's baby. That shock, it probably made her lose control of the car. I put my hand to my chest, feeling like my own heart was stopping. My Sarah, my strong, cheerful girl, but also so fragile. I imagined her sitting behind the wheel, tears streaming down her face, her hands trembling, trying to get to that place to demand an explanation. And then, the accident happened. I was barely recovering when Evelyn spoke again, her voice full of contempt. If she didn't know how to keep her husband, she has to deal with the consequences. In my family, we don't want weak women, and on top of that, barren ones. That sentence was the last straw. I took a step toward her, ready to scream in her face, to tell her that Sarah wasn't some piece of merchandise for her to judge. But Jessica was faster and stopped me with her hand. She stared hard at Evelyn and in a clear, forceful voice said, "So do you want me to make this video public? So the whole world can know how proud the Caldwells are that their son is cheating on his wife." The hallway fell into a deathly silence. A few nearby nurses stopped talking and turned to look at us. A doctor passing by also stopped, curious. Evelyn turned pale, pursed her lips, and her eyes darted from side to side. She muttered something I didn't understand, something like "bunch of trash," and turned to leave, the clicking of her heels echoing down the hall. Jessica took my hand and whispered, "Don't pay any attention to them. I'm not going to let them take advantage of Sarah anymore." I sank into the chair, feeling like the whole world was crushing me. But for the first time in my life, I saw a ray of light. Sarah wasn't alone anymore. Jessica, that girl I thought was just another one of my daughter's friends, turned out to be the person willing to defend her. And I, her 68-year-old mother, couldn't just stand by and watch things happen. Minutes later, I was sitting on a cold stone bench in the hospital garden, under the yellowish light of a lamppost that stretched my shadow across the ground. Jessica brought me here to get away from the curious stares of the nurses and families in the hallway. The night was cool, and I pulled the old shawl I was wearing tighter around me, my hands still clutching the cup of hot tea Nurse Teresa had given me. The warmth of the cup was nothing compared to the cold that gripped my heart. Jessica sat down next to me in silence and played the video on her phone again. "Watch it again," she said in a low but firm voice, as if she wanted me to face the truth once more. The video was short, less than 2 minutes, but every image, every sound was like a stab to the soul. Mark, my son-in-law, standing there in a pristine white shirt, raising a wine glass with a radiant smile. Next to him, a young woman, her belly slightly swollen, clearly pregnant. The people around her were calling her Lucy, their voices excited. Evelyn was right there smiling from ear to ear, and she even turned to shout in her shrill voice, "A grandson for the Caldwells!" A real one this time. The sound of clinking glasses and laughter echoed, as if they were celebrating a victory. I watched the screen with a knot in my stomach, them celebrating, while my Sarah was in an emergency room fighting for her life with every second. Jessica leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "See? They planned this party on purpose without Sarah finding out." My friend told me they even told each other not to let Sarah know anything. I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen, where Mark, the same young man who used to call me Mom in a syrupy voice, was hugging Lucy by the shoulders, smiling as if nothing was wrong. I remembered the early days when Sarah introduced him to me, telling me with such excitement that he had promised to love and protect her for the rest of her life. I believed him. I thought that boy would be a support for my daughter. And now, there he was, with another woman while my daughter almost lost her life because of the blow his own family had dealt her. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms until they almost bled, but I felt no pain. The real pain was in my heart, where every stab of betrayal felt stronger and stronger. "Sarah, what time did you get this video?" I asked in a hoarse voice, almost breathless. Jessica checked her phone, opening her messages. "At 12:19 p.m., she answered, her eyes red. After that, Sarah texted me asking for the restaurant's address. I sent it to her right away, but she never answered me back. I did the math in my head. The accident was around 1 p.m., according to what Nurse Teresa told me. That meant Sarah, right after seeing the video, got in her car and drove straight to the party. I pictured her in the car, tears streaming down her face, hands trembling on the steering wheel, her mind flooded with the pain of betrayal. She must have been thinking about how she was going to confront Mark, Evelyn, that whole family celebrating the Caldwell grandson without her. Just thinking about it, I felt like I was suffocating. Jessica touched my shoulder gently, her voice trembling. "Ma'am, this isn't just an affair. It's a plan. They want to get Sarah out of the Caldwell family." I looked up at her. Jessica's gaze was firm, but also full of pain. "My friend told me," she continued, "that Evelyn never liked Sarah, because she hasn't given them a child yet. They wanted Mark to have another wife, one who could give them a grandson. Lucy was Evelyn's choice. Jessica's words were like pouring gasoline on the fire burning inside me. A plan? They had planned to remove my daughter from Mark's life, as if Sarah were an object that was no longer useful, something unworthy. I remembered the times Sarah would call me, her voice sad, telling me how Evelyn always compared her to Mark's friends, how she always criticized her for not knowing how to keep her husband. I would tell her, "Don't pay them any mind, honey. You just live your life well." But now I realized how foolish I'd been. Living well isn't enough. It's never enough when you're up against so much cruelty. "I understand now, Jessica," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "I'm not going to stand by and do nothing." I stood up and looked toward the hospital building where Sarah was in intensive care. If my daughter couldn't speak, then I would speak for her. I went back to Sarah's bedside, where the cold white light of the intensive care unit seemed to freeze my heart. More than 3 hours had passed since the accident, but Mark hadn't shown up. Not a call, not a text, not a single sign that he cared that his wife was hovering between life and death. I took Sarah's hand. It was ice cold, and only a faint warmth in her fingertips reminded me she was still here. I whispered to her, though I knew she couldn't hear me, "I'm here, Sarah, don't be afraid." But inside, the rage and pain were growing like a tide, about to sweep everything away. I heard the clicking of shoes in the hallway. It was Evelyn. She had come back. She sat in a chair in the waiting area, a few feet from me, but she didn't even glance toward Sarah's room. Instead, she took out her phone and started making one call after another. I heard her clearly, her voice sharp and shallow, as if she were talking about a trip to the grocery store. "Hello, the Pearl Spa? I'd like to book a massage for tomorrow at 10 a.m., please." Then she made another call in a bossy tone. "Margarita, clean the living room well and prepare another room for the new tenant." The new tenant? I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms until it hurt. The new tenant was Lucy, Mark's mistress, the one the entire Caldwell family was celebrating. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and went out into the hallway, my voice trembling but trying to stay calm. "Where is your son, Evelyn?" She didn't even look up, just waved her hand as if shooing away a fly. "Mark is busy. He can't always drop his affairs to come running." I froze as if I'd been slapped. Busy? His wife was in an emergency room after her heart had stopped and he was busy. I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fury burning in my chest. "His wife is between life and death," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "And he's perfectly happy with his mistress." "How can you say that?" Evelyn looked up and stared at me like I was crazy. Her eyes were cold, her red lips pursed, and then she let out a mocking little laugh. "At least she knew how to give this family an heir. And your Sarah, what is she? A bundle of nerves who's good for nothing but causing trouble." That sentence was like a knife in my heart. My Sarah, the daughter who had sacrificed so many years to be a good daughter-in-law, was a bundle of nerves. I turned my face away, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that my Sarah was worth more than the entire Caldwell family put together, but I knew it wasn't the time. I needed to save my strength to be with my daughter. Just then, I heard another set of heels, sharper this time. Linda, Mark's sister, walked in with her husband, dressed as if they were going to a party. She was wearing a tight Gucci dress, sparkling heels, and sunglasses, even though we were in a hospital hallway. Her husband, a short, fat guy with a fake smile, was beside her checking his phone. They walked over to Evelyn and whispered, but loud enough for me to hear every word. "Is Sarah still alive, Mom? If not, we should start preparing the asset papers." I stood there, my blood running cold. The asset papers? My daughter hadn't even woken up. She was still fighting for her life, and they were already thinking about dividing up her things. This was the family Sarah once called her in-laws? I felt the floor open up beneath me. Sarah had dedicated her youth to loving Mark, to trying to fit into that family, putting up with the passive-aggressive comments and looks of contempt from Evelyn and Linda. And now, While she lay motionless in a bed, they were talking as if my daughter were just an obstacle to be removed from their path. Before I could react, a flower delivery man entered the hallway with a huge bouquet of red roses. He looked around and asked, "Family of Miss Sarah?" I raised my hand, though I already had a feeling something bad was coming. He handed me the bouquet with a small card. I opened it and I felt my heart stop as I read, "Hope you get to the other side soon, Sarah." The card was signed by Lucy. I looked at the flowers, then at the card, feeling my world collapse. It wasn't just betrayal, it was cruelty, it was pure evil. Without a word, I borrowed a pair of scissors from a nurse. In front of Evelyn and Linda, I cut the card into tiny pieces and threw the entire bouquet into the trash can. The sound of the flowers hitting the bottom was dull, like my heart breaking. Evelyn's eyes went wide and she jumped to her feet. "What are you doing? You're going to pay for insulting my family." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice calm but sharp. "No, the ones who are going to pay are you, for what you've done to my daughter." I turned and walked back to Sarah's room, clutching Jessica's phone in my hand, where that video was still saved. I didn't go home that night. After what happened at the hospital, I couldn't leave Sarah's side, not even to get a little sleep. I curled up on the hard plastic chair in the waiting room. With the little blanket nurse Teresa gave me, which wasn't nearly enough to warm the chill I felt inside. The next morning, Jessica showed up. She brought me my purse, some personal things, and a hot breakfast burrito, whose smell reminded me of the days I used to make them for Sarah when she was a little girl. "Eat something so you can get your strength back," Jessica said, her eyes full of concern. I nodded, but the food got stuck in my throat. I wasn't hungry. I only wanted one thing, to see Sarah wake up, smile, and call me Mom. At 7 a.m. sharp, Dr. Evans came in. His voice was soft but serious. "Sarah is stable for now, Carmen. She can't wake up yet, but she's showing neurological reflexes. That's a good sign." Hearing that, I felt my eyes well up with tears. Stable. Those two words were like a small light in the middle of so much darkness. I stood up and went into the intensive care unit. Sarah was there, a breathing tube in her mouth, her face pale but still beautiful like an angel's. I gently touched her cheek and whispered, "I know everything, honey. I'm not going to let them bury you in silence." I thought about the video Jessica showed me, about Mark, Evelyn, Lucy, and especially about the man who was next to Lucy at the party. He seemed closer to her than Mark himself, and his look and smile was seared into my memory. When I saw the video the first time, I didn't pay much attention, but now, that image was like a piece that didn't fit in my head. Something wasn't right. It wasn't just betrayal. I took out my phone and texted Jessica. "The man who was next to the pregnant girl in the video. Do you know who he is?" A few minutes later, Jessica sent me a close-up of the image with a message. "Not sure, but I think he's a friend of hers from college. His name is Joel." I saved the name and the photo, and my determination became clearer. I couldn't just sit in the hospital waiting while the Caldwells mocked Sarah. I had to do something, find the truth, no matter how painful it was. That night I went home, took a shower, and put on clean clothes. The house was suffocatingly silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. I called Tom, my nephew, who's in his last year of law school. He had worked as a summer associate for Beatrice, my best friend, so I knew he was good with paperwork and research. "Tom," I said, my voice hoarse after a sleepless night, "I need you to find someone trustworthy for me. Someone who doesn't ask too many questions, but who knows how to investigate discreetly." Tom answered immediately, his voice resolute. "I know a guy, Arthur Vance. He was a police detective and now he's a private investigator. He's a straight shooter but a little gruff." I nodded even though Tom couldn't see me. "Perfect. Get me a meeting with him." The next morning I met Arthur at a bakery near my house. He was a man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a gaze as sharp as a knife. I put my phone on the table, showed him the video, and told him everything. Sarah's accident, the party video, Lucy's cruel flowers. I pointed to the photo of the man named Joel. I want to know who this man is, I said, my voice firm. What his relationship is with the pregnant girl. And if there's proof, I want photos, videos, whatever it takes. Arthur raised an eyebrow and nodded. How far do you want to take this investigation? I looked him straight in the eye. All the way. I need the truth. Arthur took the case. I gave him a $20,000 retainer, the savings I had put together to give Sarah when she had a baby next year. It was everything I had, but I didn't hesitate for a second. If that money could help me protect my daughter, it was worth every penny. Arthur took the money and promised to call me when he had something. I left the bakery with a heavy heart, but also a little lighter. I had started, even if it was with a small step. On my way to the hospital, I decided to stop by the house where Mark and Sarah lived. I had a key because I often went to clean and cook to help my daughter out. The house was silent. No one was there. I put on gloves, a habit from my days working in a sewing workshop to not leave fingerprints. I turned on my phone's flashlight and started going through the drawers and folders in Mark's study. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I needed proof. Anything that could shed light on this. In an old wooden filing cabinet, I found a folder. My heart pounded as I flipped through the pages. It was a contract for a property transfer in Sarah's name. The little house on the outskirts of town that my husband and I had left her. Next to it was a series of power of attorney documents with a signature that looked like Sarah's, but the handwriting was shaky, not like her usual signature. I kept looking and found bank statements showing that Sarah had been regularly depositing money into another account, one that wasn't Mark's. I stood there, my hands trembling and my head spinning. The Caldwells hadn't just betrayed Sarah emotionally, they were also planning to steal her assets. I took out my phone, took pictures of everything, and copied it all onto a small USB drive I had with me. Carefully, I put everything back as it was and locked the door, as if I had never been there. That night, I sent all the files to Tom, asking him to encrypt them and save them in a secure folder. I also sent a copy to Beatrice. An hour later, Beatrice called me, her voice serious. Carmen, this is a good start. These papers prove something fishy is going on, but we need a knockout blow. Are you ready? I gripped the phone and answered with a firm voice. I'll do whatever it takes to get justice for my daughter. 4 days had passed since I hired Arthur, the private investigator Tom recommended. 4 eternal days in which I barely slept, sitting by Sarah's side, holding her hand and whispering words of comfort that I didn't know if she could hear. Every day, Dr. Evans would come to give me an update. Sarah is more stable, but she still needs time. I would nod, but in my mind, there was only one thought. I had to uncover the truth. I had to protect my daughter before she woke up. On the 4th night, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Arthur, short, but it made my heart race. Tonight, she's meeting that guy at a hotel in the Rosewood district. I'm going to record everything. I read the message over and over, my hands shaking. Rosewood, an old neighborhood with narrow alleys and cheap hotels. I didn't know what was happening, but my gut told me this was the last piece of the puzzle I needed. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the plastic chair, looking out the hospital window at the dim street lights. I prayed, not just for Sarah, but for myself, asking God to give me the strength to face what was coming. The next morning, I met Arthur at a small cafe near a church. The smell of roasted coffee did nothing to calm my nerves. Arthur, with his salt and pepper hair and cold gaze, placed an external hard drive on the table. I have what you need, he said, his voice low but confident. He connected the drive to his laptop and played a video. I held my breath, my eyes glued to the screen. The image was clear. Lucy, Mark's mistress, walking into a small, old-looking hotel with a flickering neon sign. She was wearing a tight red dress. Her pregnant belly was noticeable, but she walked with confidence. Waiting for her at the front desk was Joel, the man I saw in the party video. They hugged, laughed, and then kissed right there in front of the receptionist without a care in the world. The hallway camera recorded them going up to the room, chatting animatedly. Lucy was laughing and Joel patted her on the shoulder, as if they'd known each other for a long time. After almost 40 minutes, they came back down. Arthur switched to an audio recording, and what I heard made my blood run cold. Joel's voice, deep but full of arrogance, echoed, "The whole Caldwell family is a bunch of morons. They think this baby is their blood. Nobody knows it's my son." Lucy let out a laugh, her voice sharp. "Let them support it. In a couple of years, we'll make up an excuse and take off for California, and that's that." I just sat there, my hands shaking, the cup of coffee in front of me now cold. So the baby the Caldwells were celebrating, the one Evelyn called the Caldwell grandson, wasn't Mark's son? It was all a sham, a deception to use Sarah and steal her property. I looked at Arthur, my voice breaking. Is this real?" He nodded, his gaze serious. "The original is on this hard drive. I recommend you give it to your lawyer, and don't send it to anyone to avoid problems." I nodded, clutching the hard drive in my hand, feeling like I was holding a bomb about to go off. I left the cafe and drove straight to Beatrice's office. She was already waiting for me, and her eyes lit up when I walked in. I gave her the hard drive and told her everything. She watched the video, listened to the audio, and when she was done, she took my hands tightly, her voice filled with emotion. "Carmen, you've just destroyed their entire moral facade. With this evidence, plus the papers you found at Mark's house, we are going to win this case. No doubt about it." I looked at Beatrice, feeling both relief and a heavy weight at the same time. Win the case? I didn't just want to win. I wanted the Caldwells to pay for putting my daughter through this nightmare. That night, I sat alone on my balcony under the pale moonlight that lit up the empty street. The sound of the old TV news in the living room mixed with the sound of a distant ambulance. I thought about Sarah, about the years she lived under the Caldwells' control, about the times she called me with a sad voice to tell me about Evelyn's criticisms. I thought about Lucy and Joel, about their disgusting plan, and about Mark's terrifying silence. I knew a huge storm was coming, but this time I was going to be the one directing it. On Monday morning, I woke up with a stone in my chest. I hadn't slept well, just a few fitful hours. My mind filled with images of Sarah in the hospital bed, of Lucy's cruel audio, and of the forged papers I found at Mark's house. Today was the day that, together with Beatrice, my lawyer, we would start to take action. We had already agreed. Beatrice would file an emergency complaint with the court for forgery of property documents. I would act as the legal representative on behalf of Sarah, since she still hadn't woken up. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was tired, my eyes were red, but my gaze was no longer that of a mother who only knew how to pray. I was ready to fight. I called Tom, my nephew, and asked him to find Sarah's old signatures. Anything from previous years, like receipts, letters, or old contracts. We needed to compare them with the shaky signatures on the power of attorney documents I had found. Tom, with the sharpness of a law student, promised to handle it carefully. "I'm going to check every legal trace, Aunt Carmen," he said over the phone, his voice determined. "They're not getting away with this." I nodded, though he couldn't see me, and felt a warmth in my chest knowing I wasn't alone. In the afternoon, I went to a small cafe near the hospital, a discreet place Beatrice had chosen. It was hidden in an alley, with old brick walls and a few wooden tables. When I walked in, I saw that Beatrice, Dr. Evans, Jessica, and Tom were already sitting there. No one was smiling. No one said more than a brief hello. I put down my purse, sat down, and felt as if the entire world was weighing on my shoulders. On the table in front of me was a thick folder, the photos of the suspicious money transfers, Jessica's party video, and the hard drive with Arthur's proof of Lucy and Joel's hotel meeting. Everything was there, like bullets ready to take down the Caldwells. For the first 5 minutes, no one spoke. The only sounds were the hum of the air conditioning and the clinking of a spoon in a coffee cup. I looked around and saw that everyone had a heavy expression, but also one full of determination. Finally, Dr. Evans broke the silence. He adjusted his glasses and said in a grave voice, "I reviewed Sarah's latest CT scan. There's a slight improvement. She's starting to have reflexes to light, although they're very weak. I felt my heart pound and tears threaten to spill. Slight improvement. Just 2 words, but they were like a small flame in the darkness. "Thank you, doctor," I said, my voice choked up. "Then I need everything to be ready for when my daughter wakes up, so she can see she's not alone." Jessica put her phone on the table. The screen lit up with a series of notifications. "These are 9 missed calls from Mark," she said with a mocking tone. "He started calling me last night after he found out that you, Carmen, had hired a lawyer." She sighed and shook her head. "He's scared." I looked at the screen and saw Mark's name repeated over and over. 9 missed calls. Yes, he was scared. Scared that everything he and his family had hidden was about to come to light. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Let him be scared. I wasn't going to let him get away. Beatrice took out a sheet of paper with a handwritten action plan, each point as clear as a map. She slid it over to me and said seriously, "This is what we're going to do. First, I'll file a lawsuit against Mark for adultery, document forgery, and misuse of Sarah's assets. I'll also ask the court for an emergency freeze on their marital assets to prevent them from transferring anything. And finally, if necessary, we'll show the video of Lucy and Joel at the preliminary hearing." She looked at me with her sharp eyes. "Do you agree, Carmen?" I nodded without hesitation. Beatrice handed me a stack of papers that needed my signature to authorize her. My hand trembled slightly as I took the pen, but my gaze was firm. I signed each page, feeling like I was laying each stone to build a wall to protect Sarah. Each signature was a promise to my daughter. Mom's not going to let them hurt you anymore. When I finished, I handed the papers back to Beatrice and said, "Go ahead. I want them to pay." Tom, sitting next to me, smiled faintly. He whispered confidently, "Aunt Carmen, this time the Caldwells won't be able to deny it. Everything has traces, images, witnesses. I've already checked the powers of attorney. The signatures don't match Sarah's old samples. With one more legal verification, they'll have no escape." I looked at Tom and felt a warmth in my heart. This boy, only 22 years old, was by my side like a true partner. "Then let's pull back the final curtain," I said, my voice lighter but full of determination, "so the light can get into that nest of vipers." 10 days after the meeting at the cafe, Beatrice informed me that the civil court had sent an emergency summons to Mark and the Caldwell family. The neighbors started to whisper, and the gossip spread like wildfire. "They say Carmen sued the entire Caldwell family," a woman at the fruit stand told me, her eyes curious. I just nodded without answering. I didn't need the neighbors' gossip to give me strength. Every second I sat by Sarah's side in the hospital, watching her hooked up to a ventilator, was enough to make me determined to see this through to the end. Beatrice advised me not to appear in public too soon to avoid the Caldwell's tricks. But I couldn't wait any longer. I wanted to confront Mark in the place where he felt safest, his company, where Sarah had been a project director before she was suspiciously forced to resign. I wanted him to know that I was no longer the old woman who just cried and prayed. That morning, I put on a black long-sleeved blouse, my brown leather purse, tied my hair up in a bun, and put on a little makeup to hide the tired lines on my face. I looked in the mirror and saw a 68-year-old woman, but with a gaze as sharp as a knife. Beatrice and Tom accompanied me like 2 loyal guards. We arrived at Mark's corporate building, an imposing glass tower in the heart of Chicago. The young receptionist, with blonde hair and a forced smile, tried to stop us. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. I didn't answer her. I just showed her Beatrice's card and said coldly, "We're here to talk about the forgery of the power of attorney documents in this office's name." The girl looked at the card. Her eyes widened and she quickly dialed a number. The floor manager appeared instantly, pale, and stammered, Come into the conference room, please." I walked with my head held high, feeling like I owned the place. 15 minutes later, Mark entered the room. He was wearing a gray suit, but his face was drawn, his jaw tight, his hands in his pockets as if trying to hide his nervousness. He looked at me and forced a smile as if it were a joke. "What are you doing here, Carmen? Sarah hasn't even woken up and you're already thinking about paperwork." His tone made my blood boil, but I didn't answer him. I just gave Beatrice a nod and she opened her briefcase, placing on the glass table, one by one, all the pieces of evidence: Jessica's party video, the hotel video of Lucy and Joel with the clear audio, the bank statements showing the diversion of Sarah's money, and the forged contract in my daughter's name. Mark turned pale, his hands shaking as he looked over the documents. Evelyn and Linda, who were already in a corner of the room, couldn't hide their bewilderment. Evelyn pursed her lips and Linda avoided my gaze, clutching her Gucci bag. Beatrice spoke, her voice as sharp as a razor. "We're not here to ask for permission. We're here to inform you that Carmen is Sarah's legal representative and that all these acts of forgery will be made public at the trial next week. You should start preparing." I looked Mark straight in the eye, my voice calm but loaded with strength. "My daughter is not dead. She's just waiting for the net of justice to close." He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. Evelyn, behind him, couldn't hold back any longer and intervened. "You're a nobody in this matter. Do you think you can go up against the Caldwells?" I turned to her, my gaze firm. "I am Sarah's mother," I said, each word like a nail into wood. "I stayed silent when you insulted her, when you stole her assets, when you celebrated the pregnant mistress because I didn't know anything. But no one, not even an old woman like me, stays silent forever when the truth comes out." No one in the room dared to answer. I stood up and walked out, leaving the bewilderment behind in that luxurious conference room. Beatrice and Tom followed me in silence, but I felt their steadfastness. As I left the building, the bright sun hit my face, but I didn't feel its warmth. I felt light, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had faced Mark, the Caldwells, and I hadn't trembled. The next morning, when I arrived at the hospital to see Sarah, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Jessica sent me a series of messages with links to online news articles. The first headline hit me: "Mother-in-law's fury. 68-year-old woman exposes son-in-law's infidelity. Multi-million-dollar fortune at risk of being frozen." I skimmed the articles and saw photos of me entering Mark's company, along with details of the lawsuit. Someone had leaked the information, perhaps an employee from the company or someone who witnessed yesterday's confrontation. But I didn't care. The truth had begun to spread, like light dispelling the darkness. The morning of the trial, I stood in front of the Cook County Superior Courthouse, my heart pounding in my chest. The imposing building with its cold white stone columns was packed with people. Press, media, and even old friends of the Caldwell family were there whispering. I could hear the murmurs. Did Carmen really sue the entire Caldwell family? They say Sarah almost died, didn't she? I walked through the crowd with my head held high, ignoring the curious stares. Today, I wasn't just a 68-year-old mother. I was Sarah's voice, the one that was going to tear down the Caldwell's theater of lies. I sat in the plaintiff's row, next to Beatrice and Tom. Jessica was sitting behind us, her gaze cold and fixed on the courtroom door. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my palms to stay calm. When Mark walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He was wearing a dark blue suit and sunglasses, but his face was gaunt, his beard unshaven as if he hadn't slept in days. Next to him were Evelyn and Linda, both dressed more discreetly than usual, but unable to hide their nervousness. I looked at them no longer with rage, just with a cold determination. Today, they were going to see that Sarah was not alone. The judge, Belém Rojas, a woman in her 50s, entered the courtroom. She wore thin-rimmed glasses and her expression was severe but fair. She banged her gavel and announced, "Today, this court will review the case of property document forgery, abuse of power, and evidence related to marital and financial deceit." Her voice echoed, silencing the room. I took a deep breath, feeling that everything I had done, the sleepless nights, the search for papers, the confrontation at the company, had led me to this moment. Beatrice stood up, her voice soft but powerful. Your Honor, I am not representing a simple client. I am representing a young woman who lies unconscious in an intensive care unit due to pressures that cannot be expressed in words. And today, her mother, Mrs. Carmen Aguilar, will be the voice she cannot yet use. I felt my eyes well up with tears, but I held them back, my gaze fixed on Beatrice. She signaled to the court staff, and Jessica's party video was projected onto a large screen. The images of Mark, Evelyn, Linda, and Joel appeared sharp, their laughter echoing, Evelyn's voice shouting, "A grandson for the Caldwells!" When the video ended, the room was silent. I turned to Evelyn, my voice calm but cutting. "You said my daughter deserved it, while you were hiding this terrible truth." Mark's lawyer, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, stood up to object. "This video could be manipulated, edited. We request that the court verify its authenticity." But Beatrice was unfazed. She presented a police forensic report, along with the raw, unedited data extracted from the hotel camera. Then she played the audio of the conversation between Lucy and Joel. Joel's voice echoed cold and arrogant. "The whole Caldwell family is a bunch of morons. They think this baby is their blood. Nobody knows it's my son." Lucy's laugh mixed in, sharp as a knife. "Let them support it. In a couple of years, we'll take off for California, and that's that." Mark's face turned ashen. He bowed his head, gripping his seat. Evelyn and Linda looked at each other, terrified. The room was deathly silent. The only sound was the ragged breathing of a few people. Beatrice continued, her voice growing sharper. "We also have the financial documents. Statements from Miss Sarah's accounts showing constant withdrawals to an unidentified account, suspected to belong to Miss Lucy. And here," she said, holding up the signature analysis, "the power of attorney to transfer Miss Sarah's properties was forged. The signature does not match the old samples." Judge Rojas adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Mark. "Was Miss Sarah aware of these transfers?" I stood up, even though Beatrice signaled for me to calm down, but I couldn't stay silent. "Your Honor," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "My daughter found out only after receiving that video. She got in her car that night, intending to go to the party to confront them, and tragically, she had an accident on the way. That day, my daughter was clinically dead, but she is still alive because she has not yet been able to speak her last word." The courtroom fell completely silent. A reporter in the back row discreetly wiped away a tear. I looked around and saw in the eyes of strangers a look of compassion. I said no more, just sat down and took Beatrice's hand. She squeezed it gently as if telling me I had done well. Beatrice continued, requesting the court for an emergency freeze of all usurped assets related to Mark and Evelyn to protect Sarah's rights. Judge Rojas nodded and declared, "The court approves the request for a temporary freeze. The public hearing will take place in 2 weeks." When the session ended, I stood up and left the courtroom. Before I left, I looked at Mark one last time. His head was bowed, not daring to look at me. "I once loved you like a son," I said, my voice low but clear. "But now you will pay for what you did." He didn't answer, just bowed his head lower. Evelyn and Linda rushed him out, but I knew they had no escape now. A week after the first hearing, I was still sitting by Sarah's bed, as I had every day for the past 3 weeks. The sun of a Sunday morning streamed through the blinds, illuminating my daughter's pale face. With a damp cloth, I gently wiped her hands, just as I did when she was a little girl and had a fever. Her hands were cold, but I felt a faint warmth, like a reminder that she was still fighting. I whispered, "You have to be strong, Sarah. Mom is here. I'm not going anywhere." As I was wiping her hand, I suddenly felt her fingers move slightly as if trying to grasp mine. I gasped, my heart pounded, and I called for the nurse. "Teresa, come quick!" "Sarah, she moved." 5 minutes later, Dr. Evans came in. His face was serious, but his eyes lit up as he examined her. He put a hand on my shoulder and said gently, "Her natural reflexes have returned. She could wake up in the next few hours." Hearing that, tears streamed down my face, but not of pain. For the first time in many days, I felt real hope. I stayed there, not moving, my eyes fixed on Sarah. I counted every second, every minute, praying for her to open her eyes. At 4:20 in the afternoon, like a miracle, Sarah slowly opened her eyes. Her brown eyes, weak but still bright, looked directly at me. I burst into tears and squeezed her hand. "I'm here, Sarah. I'm right here, my love." My voice broke. Tears were streaming, but I didn't care. My Sarah was back. She looked at me. Her lips moved slightly, trying to say something. I leaned closer and heard the first sentence she whispered. "He betrayed me, didn't he, Mom?" Her question was like a knife in my heart. I nodded, the tears flowing again, but I didn't hide anything from her. I told her everything that had happened in those 3 weeks. The video of the Caldwell's party, Evelyn's cruelty, Lucy's evil flowers, and the audio of Lucy and Joel. I told her about the forged papers, the confrontation at Mark's company, and the court hearing. Sarah listened, her eyes red, but she didn't cry. She just squeezed my hand tightly as if looking for an anchor. The next day, Dr. Evans allowed her to speak for 10 minutes so as not to strain her. Beatrice, Jessica, and I went into the room. Sarah was propped up on some pillows, her face still pale but with more life in her eyes. She looked at Jessica and said quietly, "Thank you, Jessica. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known anything." Jessica smiled, her eyes teary. "I just did the right thing, Sarah." Then she turned to me and whispered, "I don't remember anything after seeing the video. I just remember getting in the car, and then I saw the bright lights of another car. After that, nothing." I took a hand, trying to hold back my own tears. Beatrice, with her professional demeanor, briefly explained the legal process. Then she looked directly at Sarah and asked, "Sarah, do you want to continue with the lawsuit as the plaintiff? Your mother has done so much, but now you have the right to decide." Sarah was silent for a moment, tears running down her cheeks. Then she nodded, her voice firm though weak. "They took everything from me. My love, my trust, my money. I can't take it anymore." Hearing Sarah, I felt a new strength inside me. She was no longer the fragile girl who would call me crying to tell me about Evelyn's criticisms. My Sarah was back and she was ready to fight. A few days later, they moved her to a regular room. I bought her a new nightgown, a pale pink one with white lace, her favorite color since she was a little girl. When I helped her put it on, Sarah smiled for the first time in many days. "You still remember my favorite color, Mom," she said, her voice choked with emotion. I hugged her and whispered, "I remember everything about you, Sarah." Another week passed and Sarah was speaking more clearly. She was strong enough to sign the papers that named her as the main plaintiff. Beatrice came with a new folder and a smile. "It's time, Sarah. We're not just going to expose them. We're going to make them pay." Sarah nodded, her eyes shining, no longer afraid. I looked at her filled with pride. My girl had come back, stronger than I ever imagined. Before I left, I suggested to Sarah that she record a voice message to send to those who betrayed her. She took my hand, her voice shaky but clear. "I don't hate them for betraying me. I just regret that I ever called them family." I felt my heart ache. Sarah didn't hate them, but I knew she was in pain. I turned on my phone and recorded her words, feeling it was a final declaration of war. I looked up at my daughter's serene face and whispered, "We have one hearing left, my love. But this time, you won't be fighting alone." I left the room feeling light but determined. I thought about the years Sarah lived under the Caldwell's control, the times she tried to please them only to be met with contempt. I thought about my own journey, from being a mother who only prayed to becoming a woman who dared to confront a powerful family. I was 68 years old, but I had never felt so strong. Sarah had woken up, and that was my greatest victory. I clenched my fists, looking ahead, knowing that the next trial would be where true justice would be served, and where my daughter, at last, would raise her voice. The story you have just heard has been modified in names and locations to protect the identities of the people involved. We don't tell this to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence within their own homes? I really wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to get your voice back? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I'm convinced that courage leads us to better days. In the meantime, on the end screen, I'm leaving you 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.